2020.
It's 5 o'clock. We'll call the Portage County Board to order. One of the things I want to remind everybody first before we go any further, we all have new mics and they're supposedly some more sensitive. There's a little note on there. They are always active as the past ones were as well. So hopefully we don't have to lean in or get as close, and hopefully everybody at home can hear us very well. Am I coming through good at home? Okay.
I can hear you fine.
And one of the other things, we're not using the clickers, and I wanted to explain that, or the vote casters. It's part of the WebEx that we're going through some growing pains. People at home obviously don't have a way to vote, and we got just a legal question about us pushing their buttons because we need to have it as our recording for how the votes go, and that is used off of the clickers. So there's some legal questions on whether they can be telling our staff how to vote for them. So that's where the problem lies, and we will continue to try and work through this and search out other means so that we can get back to our clickers. So bear with us. We're trying a few different things tonight as far as the votes. So roll call.
So we have 6 supervisors attending remotely: Supervisors Johnson, Hanel, Moresi, Robbie, Pataki, and Zastro. We have 1 excused Supervisor Martinson, who may arrive later, and we have 18 supervisors. And all members are present except Supervisor Martinson.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation by Supervisor Antanande. Whichever you choose, you can do it from there or up at the podium.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it is an honor and privilege to serve our constituents and our communities. In 2019 and 2020, we faced a number of disasters created by nature and human shortcomings. In March of 2019, we faced a rapid snow melt event resulting in area flooding of homes and damage to our agricultural industry. On July 19th and 20th of 2019, we faced storms that caused extensive damage to our communities and brought our best in human behavior of neighbor helping neighbor for the common good. Then came the pandemic that required decisions making and action for our own safety based on science and common sense. Some decisions were not without controversy. At the end of the day, it is impossible for governing bodies to regulate common sense, or it will be accused of some conspiracy nonsense, which out of fear and frustration, name, blame, and shame decision makers. We have a responsibility to maintain civility and respect for each other, to agree to disagree without being disagreeable. After all, we all live in this finite place called Earth. It is our home in which we all live, notwithstanding the color of our skin, sexual orientation, or economic standing. Prejudice is not a natural state. It is a cultural learned activity. Let us hope that we have the knowledge and the wisdom to treat each other with respect and dignity, so that through our actions we can preserve the heritage, history, and culture of the community we are privileged to serve.
Thank you. Review and approval of June 16, 2020 County Board minutes. Motion by Supervisor Laddick. Seconded by Supervisor Gussel. Discussions, corrections, or changes? All those in favor with aye? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Correspondence, it had none, but we all received the green books. If you get a chance, I encourage you all to look through there. There's a lot of good information. There's a lot of work that goes into these. It's a very nice book. It's easy to follow and easy to read, and it's a short read. So I encourage everybody to take a look at it. Presentations, CWA Director Brian Graff. If you'd like to, sir, you could come up and use this one up in the front so that everybody can see you. Or see half of you.
Much better. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, when I was driving here today, I was pouring cats and dogs in Mosinee, and then I crossed Dubay right on the Portage County border. The sun opened up, or the sky opened up, it stopped raining, shut my wipers off. So what I'm saying is I'm glad to be in Portage County today. My presentation more or less follows what's in the packet. That was something I put together for a newsletter publication. But I'll go a little bit further into depth on that and highlight a few topics that were not addressed there. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask. I'll keep it relatively brief and get you out of here at a good time, at least before the sun sets. Let's rewind a little bit to when 2020 started. January and February of this year were our highest January and February ever. We were on pace for a record year. All-time record year. Then, of course, as everybody knows in this room, COVID-19 hit mid-March. Those numbers dropped off significantly. By April, we were down 95%, so seeing only 5% of our traffic a year ago, the previous day. So low days, we saw 8-10 passengers. That was down from 450 to 500 passengers per day. So very significant. And really, we're still realizing the full impacts of that. CARES Act was passed in late March. That was very significant for a lot of people, but also the airport industry. Of that, Central Wisconsin Airport received $3.8 million to go towards debt service, payroll, and other operational expenses, really to make us whole. Combine that with drastic reduction in spending, we're actually doing pretty well this year, all things considered. The passenger numbers are only one aspect of our revenues, but they do drive everything. It impacts our parking numbers, it impacts our concessions, it impacts rental cars. But given those reductions we made, given the supplemental funding, and continuing it on, seeing some bit of recovery, we're pretty comfortable until about the first of the year 2022. So not coming to today to ask for money, so that's the good news. And we are starting to see a recovery already. As I mentioned, we were down to 5 passengers a day. Really during the trough of this, we're up to 120 to 180 passengers a day right now. So that's 20 to 30% of last year's numbers. So it's still certainly less than what we want, but it is in some ways a recovery. Moving forward to the first full week in August, we will be up to 8 flights daily. Pre-COVID-19, we were running between 10 and 11 flights daily. So that's a significant recovery. And we're seeing that people just want to travel. I'll get into kind of the precautions that the airlines at the airport has taken into a bit, but we are seeing that demand pick up. It turns out that a global pandemic is a great time to do projects. We were able to accomplish a lot. Some we already had committed to, which is why you'll see quite a bit going on, and some we needed to do. So I'll just highlight those quickly, and they are in the packet as well. Concourse Renovation is probably the most noticeable. The Concourse is the one project that really wasn't touched on the 2015-2014 remodel. So that is more or less untouched for 20 to 25 years. It just needed an update of everything: carpet, HVAC, moving around some podiums. We didn't make it physically bigger, but it was really just a refreshing and update. We added some common amenities that you see popping up at other airports, like we term them privacy rooms. They're a multi-function type of room, but geared towards private meetings, nursing mothers, and we just want to be as accommodating as possible. Also, we have a giant chess set. You can see that in the packet as well. So we've got a little interaction to get people and children off of phones and electronic devices. That's something that the board certainly supported. It's very well received by the community and the passengers. Both of them that are coming around. Another project, this is one that started prior to COVID-19, but it is not an airport project. It's a partner project, is the Ascension Spirit Medical Transport Hangar that started late last fall, early winter. That's been moving along. Right now it looks more or less complete. They're working on the interior and the paving around the outside. But if you've been by the airport in the last few months, it's looking very, very sharp. Other landside improvements we've made, terminal landscaping, we updated that. We resealed and painted our parking lot, roadway, etc. Just general maintenance type of items. Those are projects that we committed to before and found out that the CARES money is able to fund that, so we were able to keep moving on those projects. The biggest project moving forward that we designed this past year, and it is not in your packet, is our runway 1735 reconstruction. Runway 1735 is our secondary runway, or our crosswind runway, that we had originally planned on reconstructing in 2016, but due to our runway geometry, I know a lot of you are following, we couldn't get funding for that because we quite honestly didn't know what we were going to do with our runways and how they were oriented with each other. As we complete our master plan process, the FAA is now comfortable saying yes, that runway is going to stay in its existing location and it's going to stay its existing length, so we can get a grant to reconstruct that. Typically an airport our size, prior to COVID-19, would receive 90% of the funding from the federal government. Given our reduction in revenues, that would be very challenging. The project was bid out, came in at $14 million. CARES Act also increased the federal share to 100%. So we are anticipating in the next couple months that entire project to be funded completely by the federal government. So very, very excited about that. It's a much needed project and good money into the community. And new announcement as of Friday, so this is brand new. We will have a new tenant on the airport, or a newly constructed hangar. Odyssey Aviation, they've actually been a tenant with the FBO for quite a few years, operate a corporate jet aircraft, and they will be building a larger hangar, near the Ascension Spirit hangar. So we're very excited about that. A good long-term lease and a good long-term partner. So changes you'll see, we have changed what we're doing, as I alluded to earlier, not just the airport, the airlines, all of the airport stakeholders. The first I alluded to slightly is the parking system. We are updating that. That will be a cashless system. Most people pay with a credit card anyway, but now we will no longer have the ability to take cash. It's a little way the world is going, although we did make the decision with the support of the board to do that prior to the trend of cashless everything. The reason for that is our revenue numbers, quite honestly. That cash machine, the fully automated cash machine, is about $38,000 to $40,000, and given our revenues, we just couldn't swing it. We've also reduced our parking lot size. As you come in, you'll see only one parking lot, and that will remain just one parking lot until numbers pick up, where we can open the other two. Cleaning, it's being done by everybody and everywhere. We've increased our cleaning. TSA is cleaning constantly. The airlines are cleaning in between every flight, the jet bridges, and the filtration system on aircraft is HEPA filter, so it circulates. I think it's in the presentation. I don't remember exactly what it was, but many times over the course of a flight. So all of the safety precautions that you see being done everywhere in your daily lives are being done at the airport too, to make traveling as safe as possible. So I'll just leave you with the highlights. We are, a couple talking points, we are 100% open. If people want to fly, if they choose to fly, we're open. It will be as safe as possible. I think the precautions that are put into place are very reasonable. One of those are face masks. So anybody traveling will be required to wear face masks at every touch point in the process. So that's not all the time, 100% of the time. Most people are doing that, but it is ticketing on the aircraft, boarding, gate check, really all the main interaction points. Also give yourself more time if you are flying. TSA's procedures, they're trying to support social distancing as well. It takes longer to get through that TSA checkpoint. So I'll give yourself 90 minutes. We've got a beautiful renovated concourse. Please pass that along if people are traveling. Give yourself a little extra time. Then, of course, as with everything, don't travel, don't fly if you're sick. All right. Any questions for me? Doing all right on time?
Yes. Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I see that you were touting that we became a temporary parking place for some of Delta Airlines airplanes. Were we able to recoup any monies for them being parked there, or did we do that free of charge? Or
No, we received a fee. The exact dollar amount I can't recall, but it's just north of $40 per aircraft per day. So it was a significant revenue source.
Supervisor Laddick.
And just comment, being on that Central Wisconsin Airport Joint Board, we have probably one of the best management teams up there at CWA that I've ever come across. We're very confident in our abilities, and Brian and his staff have done a really commendable job in managing that airport and getting the grant monies that we need to do these projects. And then also, Brian, if you could just touch on, I know it's only July, but if you can touch on our snow removal capabilities, and I know we've got some new equipment coming, and how that's been transpiring the last 2 years with some of our heavy snowfalls.
Thank you, Supervisor Laddick, for the question. We, over the past 5 years, really took a concentrated effort to update our snow removal plan, or excuse me, our snow removal fleet, which includes the addition of 3 new combination units. They are a multifunction combination unit that has a 24-foot plow pulling a 22-foot broom that's able to plow and sweep the runway at approximately 30 miles an hour. So given a standard, 2 to 4 inch snowfall, we can clear a runway down to bare pavement in 20 to 35 minutes, depending on wind and just the density of the snow. So very significant. That is important because of the hubs we fly to. In terms of air travel, Minneapolis, Chicago, and Detroit are very, very close. So as soon as they launch in the air, we need to get out and get those runways clear so we can give them the runway condition codes, the metrics we use to communicate with them just before they touch down, and I give them reasonable assurance that that it's safe to land. We also invested in 2 new blowers to get it off of the edge of the pavement. A couple new ramp loaders for the ramp area, and boy, really everything but our salt and sand trucks have been invested in. So we're proud to say and confidently say we have the best snow removal in the state, probably the country, but I may be biased.
Anybody else have any questions? With that, I thank you for coming and look forward to seeing you again next year with some
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
new numbers increased. Thank you. County Executive Holman and Health and Human Service Director Ray Shabilsky, COVID-19 update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, everybody. Just want to take take you through a few different updates, pieces of information, kind of shed some light on some of the conversations that are happening, well, all the time really, but as of late. So if you've been paying attention, if you follow the Portage County dashboard, which is accessible via the county website, you will see the DHS data there that's been reported, and you can track the active cases, negative cases, all kinds of information below that as well in terms of daily increases, things like that. So the recent trend for us in Portage County has been around 40 new cases per week, and that does generate a lot of workload for the Division of Public Health, especially because a lot of the contact tracing, when you're dealing with the majority, or, a significant portion of the confirmed cases in a 20 to 29 year age group, sometimes it can be a challenge communicating with them and following up with them and getting as much cooperation as you want. So just to point that out. Also, there is an ebb and flow to some of this. The recent trends in Wisconsin are certainly worrisome in terms of the state as a whole. But just, over the last week, the confirmed cases from July 14th to the 17th was 12 in total. But then July 18th through the 20th was 26. So you had quite a bump there. And today was back to 4. So it's fluctuating over time. Some of that has to do with the pace of tests through the WED system, which is the system that we enter all the data in for the state, and also the time for tests to go to a lab and then come back to us. And there's a variety of labs doing that. They all have different timelines, but suffice it to say, there's a tremendous amount of work going on, and testing continues to be robust. And we've had the National Guard here a couple of times, but also hospitals, they're back to 100% surgeries and things like that. So people who do anything with that get a pre-surgery sort of test. And so that generates a lot more data that needs to be handled through the system. There's been a lot of questions around what the term recovered means, because you see that at DHS, you see it on the dashboard, on Facebook. And so I just, we've addressed that on Facebook through the Division of Public Health, but it's worth noting, and I just want to emphasize that here tonight, and for all of you, but also anybody who's listening, that the guidance and the data and the definitions that we're all working with are not determined here locally, but determined by Wisconsin DHS. And that's true for all counties. And so there are some, slight tweaks in how different counties present different information or flow of information, but generally speaking, all of the work that's being done locally is still being guided by the state, and then in some cases the federal government. So the CDC in essence. Building on that, we do receive a lot of unfortunate and misplaced accusations. People are anxious. I get that. There's a lot of frustration with a lot of aspects of this, and that also makes a whole lot of sense. And that's from all sides. It's not just from one particular point of view or another. It's surprisingly, comprehensive. And it's on any number of things. It's not necessarily on the hot topics. It's on things that people just dig into and find something in the minutia that they find to be problematic. But, I'm just asking all of you, either whether you're listening or as supervisors, for your help to let people know, whether it's on Facebook, in your circle of friends or otherwise, that the local health officers here and elsewhere across the state, they're following the guidance that's provided to them. We'll continue to address the things as they come up. And in the sense, like when we do get these questions, we respond. They don't just linger, but just kind of reinforcing to people that everybody's working as hard as they can with the best information they've got to date. And so that will help, I think, kind of mitigate some of the frustration maybe, or some of the questions that people have about why this, why that, because ultimately we end up referring people back to the guidance that we're operating off of. So just for the sake of clarification, and so you can all hear it, I also wanted to just provide you with DHS's definition of what recovered means, because again, there's a lot of questions around the term. So according to DHS, what it means is that the number of patients recovered from COVID-19 is defined as the number of confirmed cases who are currently alive based on Wisconsin State Vital Record System data and had one or more of the following: documentation of resolved symptoms, documentation of release from public health isolation, or it's been 30 days since symptom onset or diagnosis of a confirmed case. So active cases would include COVID-19 cases that were diagnosed within the last 30 days, and they're not known to have died and then do not yet meet the definition of having recovered. And DHS goes on to say, just for full disclosure from their point of view, the DHS data indicates that the vast majority of reported cases who recovered did so within 30 days. Rarely more than 30 days were required to recover. As a result, a very small number of cases who are still recovering might be included in the recovered category. And that's just confirming what we're learning more and more about each day, in the sense that individuals' paths through their experience of the virus varies pretty wildly. And so even if there may be a couple people within the recovered numbers that may be still dealing with some symptoms, but other than that, they fall under the definitions from DHS. Building on the same topic here, we've also received questions about how the data is displayed on the dashboard or on Facebook or anywhere like that. So we've had some conversations about that. The feedback is welcome and it's good, and it's helped kind of inform, how we've looked at presenting the data, because we realize that it's handy for the public to have something that's easily shareable through their Facebook network or whatever they're using. But because there are so many questions, what I did is I reached out to DHS and said, hey, I've talked to some of my peers in other counties. We're experiencing the same sort of questions about how data is being presented. Do you have any feedback on that? So that what we can do as the county is say, look, this is what DHS is saying in terms of the best way to present data according to them. It's consistent with how they present their data. And that way, when the questions come up, we can just let people know no one's, taking some twists and turns on trying to interpret or show data one way or the other. It's following the guidance that we're receiving from DHS. There's been questions around the county's PPE policy, which was shared with you when it was implemented on July 1st. So I just wanted to reinforce that, there's a lot of different policies being discussed around the state, but, within our policy, which is pretty broad and comprehensive just because of the nature of business in a county with so many departments doing very different things, is that for any department, and this is in the policy, it says for all departments, masks should be worn in areas in which an employee will come into close contact with others, aka each other, or when meeting with members of the public. And so those instances are fewer and far between versus in the past, because we also, through happenstance or maybe wisdom, we put in those plexiglass barriers. And so there's varying levels of ways to try to mitigate any sort of interaction with the public or potential interaction or spread of the virus. So people are generally still rotating shifts, teleworking, making appointments. They're not meeting in person for anything that they don't have to meet in person for. But if they have to meet in person, especially when they're in a medium risk or high risk, they have to wear whatever the PPE is. That's totally required. But even if you're in a low risk and you can't maintain social distance, you're still asked to wear the mask as part of that policy. Just also so you know, the policy also provides room for department specific, in the sense that the policy could provide a floor in terms of, we all have to do this, but if you're in a really unique situation, like say the jail, they can have additional things that they're putting into place to mitigate their experience of interacting with members of the public. I've mentioned this for, I guess, a little bit over a month now, but there's a lot of, counties across the state. It's not a coincidence, and I say this quite a bit, but it's not a coincidence that, pretty much every county in the state is in this sort of waiting pattern and seeing what's happening, primarily for some of the legal cases that you've seen, which I explained in the press release I put out recently and shared with you, but also because of the work group that was put together. And that work group was put together via the county's association, but there's also the local health officers, there's Chamber of Commerce, Restaurant Association. It's a broad stakeholder group that's looking at all the different pieces to something. And, I think, people can have some sort of visceral feelings about one aspect of that or the other, but the intention of it is to, look at this for the long term. Like, what is something that's going to be durable in terms of actions that can be taken in terms of addressing things that people are facing now or into the future. So the update for that group is that they did meet last Thursday. They're generally meeting weekly, but they're not meeting this week. They're not meeting this week because they're drafting their analysis. They're putting all the information together to say, all right, here's all the things that we've kind of discussed and put into a framework that then counties can take and say, okay, what do we do with this? And it would help, it's going to help provide counties more of a sure kind of place to operate from, because as I said before, many counties don't have bodies of law or ordinances that deal with communicable diseases in specific ways that you'd want to have that degree of specificity. If you're putting in like a county, if Bayfield County wants to put in an ordinance, any county, they need to base it off of something. And people refer to Chapter 252 of state statute, which is a legitimate reference, and it covers local health officer authority, but that's also the chapter of state statute that's in all these court cases in the state and federal level. And so there's a degree of seeing how are those court cases shaking out? What's the court's interpretation? And what might the legislature do after the court's interpretation? There's a lot of things in play that counties are, we're working together, we're talking to each other many times a week and keeping an eye on all these things so that if there's things that we can do, we want to make sure, again, that they're durable. And what I mean by that is it's not just, we did this, oh, now we can't do it. And that, at the end of the day, provides a degree of instability for the public and everybody else, for that matter. Once we get this analysis back in our hands, we started the discussion on Chapter 4 and the need to update it and everything that I was just referencing at the HHS board a couple months ago. So I would ask, when we have it, I'll bring it to Chris and say, hey, can we continue that conversation to kind of see what do we know now? What does this mean? And take it from there. And we do know at a very bare minimum that we need to update Chapter 4 quite a bit. Okay. There's a lot of ongoing conversations around masks, obviously. Interesting, we saw a lot of movement with the national retailers and some different chambers of commerce across the state working together with counties and others to put in some masking policies. That's great to see. It's great to see businesses doing it. It really helps, I think, to diffuse some of the division that exists on the issue and normalizes it for some. There's still frustration, of course. You're never going to have everybody think that anything is, you're probably never going to get comprehensive approval. But nevertheless, I think what you see with the national retailers and other businesses is a reflection of the conversations that are happening even at the national level, where you have the U.S. Chamber of Commerce asking for a national mask mandate that can be implemented locally in a way that is uniform and provides, again, the same sense of how are we doing this, rather than having a million different ways of doing that. So some sort of stability. So it's good to see that. We had the Monday meeting at Health and Human Services Board. If you watched that, or if you were there, obviously there were lots of issues that came up during the meeting, lots of public feedback. It was good to hear all this. Of course, a lot of people were on WebEx, and WebEx, as you know, changed all of its the way it deals with free accounts a week and a half or so ago, but a lot of these meetings had already been scheduled. And so we're moving to either a Teams platform, which we already have, or to Zoom for a lot of people who are using the free accounts. And in the meantime, those who are using free accounts, the licensed accounts, are going to be scheduling some of these meetings because they don't have the same limitations. So knowing that will help change. But of course, if we have another discussion at the HHS board, which I'm sure there's plenty we can discuss there, as I referenced just a second ago, we've already looked at finding a larger venue. We'd certainly request assistance from Sheriff Lucas there in the corner. We definitely give the public plenty of lead time on time, date, location, again, just so that, we lay that whole process out in a way that is a lot more, it's conducive to creating the opportunity for discussion that was the intention of the thing in the first place. And another thing that I think many of us don't realize is that to us, discussion on an agenda looks pretty innocuous, like, oh, we're going to discuss something. But to the public, they might be like, what do you mean they're discussing something? What is, and so then it starts to, grow legs and arms. And then before you know it, Portage County is doing all kinds of things. So we definitely need to improve on that. We've had lots of conversations about how that will improve. Of course, a larger venue for those kinds of conversations will help with socially distancing, and masks will continue to be provided as they are at meetings for anybody who wants one. I'm almost finished, I promise. But we've had questions around education and enforcement when it comes to masks or anything really having to do with COVID-19. And so I just wanted to shed a little bit of light on that, because sometimes I think it may come across as if it's trying to distract or, put the issue aside, but that's not the case. Like people say masks, people say there's two sides. Well, I'll tell you, there's at least three sides. There's maybe the for, maybe the against, and then there's us staff in the middle going, what's practically something we can implement if we did implement something, so that that process can be informed. And we are ideologically, ambivalent in terms of for and against. There's clear data on different sides of it, but my point is that some of the questions that are asked when they're brought up are pointed to say, how does this work? Because you have to make sure you know how that works before you put it into place. Otherwise, you put something in place that's broken from the get-go. So I think I just wanted to shed a little light on that. And just for a comparison's sake, and I know that different counties have different populations, but there's also sort of scales of, personnel that can allow for certain things to happen. So, we saw that Dane County put in a mask mandate. It's heavy on the education. There is an enforcement piece in there, but in their press conference, they said law enforcement's not involved. We have this outreach and education team who's going to help enforce people and educate people along the way. Well, just so you know, they have over 140 people just in their division of public health, and they have 70 people who are dedicated to contact tracing. So they have 225 people working on these issues. Where Portage County, we have 26 in our division of public health, and we currently have 6 contact tracers, but we're constantly getting more people in because, some people will work out, some people won't, but we're doing everything we can to provide stability there. Again, this just gets back to like, there's only so many hours in a day, there's only so many people to do the work. So we need to make sure that as we have the conversations, we know that we're not just putting something on someone's desk that they're just going to throw their hands up in the air and, scream at the wall. So in any case, the state continues to provide PPE through its EOC and our own. So that's ongoing, which is very helpful. So, I may have mentioned it already, but I've also ordered operational and reserve masks for the county. So initially our purchase in the onset was for the healthcare center. So we needed to make sure that they had what they needed. So now we're at a position where we'll have a reserve for the healthcare center, a reserve for the court system because the county's on the hook for the courts, and then a reserve for county operations just in general. And then the idea is to not touch the reserve if you can help it, because it's kind of okay, supply chain is tight. Now we have an 8 to 10 week window to figure it out. So we have an operational number of masks as well to use for the public, for supervisors, for anybody. And so that's on its way. And I'm also been working with Cindy at the ADRC. They've recently made some mask purchases for members of the public, reusable cloth masks versus a type 2 surgical, so that people who may not have access to masks or can't afford a mask can still get a mask, and it's reusable at least up to 15 times. And if they have that as a resource. So looking at doing the same sort of purchase, but again, for a county-wide situation where if you had members of the public who really needed something beyond that paper mask, that they would have something they could take home and use wherever they want to use it, especially now that you're seeing more of the mask requirements at other places where people are shopping. Lastly, just so you know, keep an eye out for it. We're working on a virtual town hall sort of project where we can bring in a variety of stakeholders, again, just to kind of provide information to the community, because there's so many questions. I was on a call yesterday and I took notes, and I think I jotted down 7 different crises that we were talking about, childcare, education, fiscal, economic, just like, it's overwhelming. And so being able to find opportunities to give the public information from people like at the hospital, from public health, from law enforcement if it's relevant, from the county perspective or from the business perspective, gives them a degree of certainty that I think is elusive these days. But as that comes together, we'll certainly keep you updated. And that is my update. And now you get to hear from Ray. But if you have questions, I'm certainly.
I have more of a procedural question than what I would addressed to Ray, so I'd like to ask it now. I will be taking leave at 6 o'clock tonight because my wife is recovering for a significant surgery. I'm only allowed in the hospital till 7 o'clock. So I want to make this quick. 3 months ago, you told us that there was a $5 million estimated shortfall in revenue due to COVID. So this agenda item does apply to my question.
Sure.
I thought we may get some information on that tonight because we only have two months until it gets laid on our desk, or 3 months until it gets laid on our desk. If we don't get it till next month, it's only 2 months till it's laid on our desk. I think it might be important for us to have that well in advance of that budget being laid on our desk. So if you have any information on that tonight, or at least at the very next meeting, it would be important to lay that out in advance of I know you're working on budgets now, so you do have some handle on that. Maybe you could address that a little bit tonight and how we could get that in advance of the budget.
Yeah, it's a great question, and you're right. It is relevant to the discussion. You know, early on in this, there was way more. I mean, there's still a tremendous amount of uncertainty, but there was really a lot of questions about what is this all going to look like. Some, you know, as you all know, there's been an incredible amount of federal funding floating around the entire country, and counties, municipalities, they've been able to rely on that for certain things, which has been helpful. It doesn't always work. You can't use it for revenue replacing. But on the other angle, the initial forecast for something like sales tax were pretty disastrous. Now, that's borne out to be not as bad so far. So we'll see if that trend continues. But if we were recently we had a joint meeting with Human Resources and the Finance Committee and Executive Operations to talk about some of the approaches that are kind of on the table. What's the committee's thoughts? What are people thinking now? To your point, like get the conversation started there before we start, you know, getting into the meat of things, because we do have to provide guidance to departments and things like that. And you know, that same kind of conversation I'll take to department heads and say, all right, here's what we heard from there. What's your opinion? What are your thoughts about these different pieces? And then we'll fold those together during our budget hearings to try to make up some differences if we can in 2020 to kind of mitigate any gaps for 2021, and then see what we really are faced with, as we approach the actual budget. And thankfully, there's some things that we can wait on to see, like how does it really shake out. And a budget's a living document too, so we got to keep that in mind. Even though we adopt it, it doesn't necessarily preclude us from making changes down the road. We make them here semi-regularly, but I think sometimes it's seen as very concrete once it's adopted. But if we talked about building strategies in that take that into account and say, maybe we build some flexibility into these aspects. So Jenny's not here, she's on vacation, but the latest sort of deficit projection anyway is closer to $3.7 million. Now that's still based on a lot of forecasting tools. We know that there's going to be larger deficits than usual. We know that the impact to the local economy will likely have a lag. You know, it'll be impacting now, but that won't just be a one and done. It's like the last recession. It carried out over 2, 3, 4 years before we got back to normal. So that's why we're also taking the approach of looking at 2021. But if we can hash out a lot of those details, then pivoting straight to 2022 to say, okay, we have this data for 2021. What can we put into place for 2022 so that we're not just thinking in an annual window, we can look more broadly. So there's a lot of things left to discuss in terms of some of the mechanisms that we may need to rely upon in order to make up some of these differences. You know, some of that may involve service and program cuts. And I think, you know, we discussed it at the committee, and, you know, we've talked about this in the past. We've talked about it at a committee level. And sometimes, you know, rightfully so, there's, you know, I think it was Joan who said it last year, like we're consistently put into place as by the state to choose between things that we kind of universally value. So right from the get-go, the conversation is difficult. And that's the point about starting the conversation now, again, to your point, in that when it comes time to adopt the budget, ideally we can all kind of see our fingerprints on aspects of it or understand what's all entailed, so that that budget adoption meeting doesn't necessarily come up with all these questions that we may have been able to answer previously. So that's the intention. I intend to maintain kind of regular updates at Finance Committee, but then also here, kind of like a rolling update. This month we're this much behind, this much, these departments we've talked with, these ones we haven't, that kind of thing, to keep you abreast of the process. And like, same deal for my first year in this job, I tell all the department heads, bring your committees into the budget process, show them your budgets, to have the discussions at the committee level so that you're all talking about your worlds and the budgets that you have. And then whichever committees you're on, you'll see folded into that greater budget at the end. So it's a very long answer to your question, but it's an excellent question to ask. So thank you for that.
Supervisor Moore.
I just had a comment. I like hearing that Portage County is purchasing more masks. I just wanted to bring up Ramsey County has a Mask for Everyone initiative and just put out a call for locals in the community who sew masks to have the county purchase locally for that. So there may be a good initiative for us to look at and see how Ramsey County is actually doing that. It may be a good model.
No, it's a great suggestion. And if you didn't hear it all, there's initiatives where local governments are, say, purchasing material for local groups who are sewing masks and putting them together. And so certainly no problems whatsoever looking into those sorts of relationships. There may be some weird kinks just because we're a government, but nevertheless, we should definitely have the discussion, because really it's not just one area to look at getting masks from, and we never know too when sort of external capacity for mass production is going to get strained. So thanks for that.
Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
Thank you, Executive Holman, for your update. I know both yourself and Chair Haga have been busily trying to keep the public informed, trying to keep the county running. I guess as I sit here and listen to your update, I was wondering if there's anything specifically that we could do as a body to help both yourself and Chair Haga through these uncertain times. I know there are things, be it budget time or working on new ordinances in planning and zoning, that have been put on the back burner. But I'm wondering if there's anything specific that you can think of that we as a body could do to lessen the load on both yourself and Chair Haga.
No, thanks. It's a great question. I think, there's probably lots of things that I haven't thought of. So if anybody has ideas, like we just heard from Supervisor Moore, definitely bring them forward. But I think probably the biggest piece now is just communication and getting information out there. And so however you communicate with your constituents, your friends, your family, it may be that county business, typically no one pays attention and it's boring and, oh, the county's, what county board, what's that? But nowadays people are focused much more intently on what we're doing. So even something as simple as demystifying things like, what does discussion mean? What does discussion possible action mean? That kind of thing, where it really, people may view something and jump to a conclusion, all very good intentioned, but just based on not knowing enough about it. So that would be helpful. I mean, I think on any of these issues, whether you're going to municipality meetings and hearing from them, I reach out to them as well, but as many opportunities we have to communicate with them, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So hearing from them what they're dealing with, because they'll have their own financial situations too, and we should be aware of that, because even though we're separate, we're still Portage County at the end of the day. So all of that would be super helpful, because I think, from my perspective, it feels like, it's maybe unfair, but it feels like, in many ways, the federal government punted to the states, and then in many ways, the state punted to us. And so there's a vacuum. And so a lot of the ways that I work generally is I try to work with people, bring people together, get them to have some hard conversations, like we heard from Supervisor Ande's invocation, which was awesome, by the way. And doing more of that work locally so that we can try to create some stability here within our own networks and getting people, less divisive, people can disagree and be divisive, but I think that the anxiety and fear maybe for some folks too is so high that it's exacerbating a lot of the tension that's just in the world generally. And so if we can provide a platform that is more cohesive or provides more of that sense of certainty and stability, just in terms of what do we know at any given time, that may help put some people at ease with some things. It's not going to capture everything, but it's a real opportunity for us as local leaders to really, work together on everything we can, reach out to our peers and municipalities and elsewhere, and businesses, and any of the fabric that holds the county together that we may overlook or take for granted. People call Portage County a traditional county a lot, and sometimes they say that in a way that is not meant to be a positive comment. But I think at this time, what I see the world looking for is the sorts of community and relationship that we have. So as much as we can feed that and encourage that and build upon that, I think that, however this plays out, we'll be better off for having done that. So same deal for me. If there's things that you see that I could be doing or that I could be involving myself in, be sure to let me know as well.
I guess I'm waiting for Chris to take a breath. The only person that likes to talk more than me, but I guess the one thing I would ask is that to take the time to educate the people when things come up, the people that don't know about government or how it works, or somebody comes up with or says something that's incorrect, the misunderstandings of it. A lot of people don't run in the same world that we do, so to try and educate them and take the time to educate them. So that's the only thing. And I'd like to ask Ray if he has anything to add. So if you're done, Chris.
I wanted to give Ray a break. He's been on the hot seat a lot lately.
Been standing there the whole time, the poor guy's gonna get him a chair.
I do have some numbers, but just let you know that we did hit 300 confirmed cases today in our county. So, and as of every Wednesday, the state puts out their dashboard. Portage County will continue, my guess is this Wednesday, to be a county of high COVID activity. I'll answer any questions.
Supervisor Moore.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to also say, I think as fellow supervisors, one thing we can do is really engage our community in conversation and engage our community in conversations around solutions. I don't think that, there's so many of us that we can really start doing that within our own districts and bring up anything we see that would be great to Ray and Chris as well.
Supervisor Matt Jakowski.
You talked about definitions, Executive Holman, earlier. When you say high COVID activity, I'm sure DHS has a definition of that. Could you share that with us, what it means to be high COVID activity?
Can you hear me in this one, or?
I can.
Okay.
Could people at home hear Ray okay on that microphone? Yep, they're giving us a thumbs up, Ray. If you.
So what they look at is they look at the number of positive cases that were identified. They look at the number of tests that you have. They're also looking at your hospitalization rates and things like that. So that's their metrics that they're going to use to put that in. If you go to their website, it's actually it's a color-coded map. There's 4 different colors that you can be. Right now, if we're high, we're that dark blue color. Most of the state is, just because as you've heard what's going on. So those are the metrics that they're looking at. We are, they look at that every Wednesday. It's a 2-week look back. And so since we've been sitting at those 40 plus cases every week, we're probably going to stay here for a while. We hope to see that go down, obviously, by the time we get to the latter part of this summer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Gifford.
Yeah, hey, Ray, that was the most contentious meeting I've been in last Monday. First time I'd been heckled and yelled at by the public. But as you might have heard me say in my comments there, that I was trying to get people to focus on the longer term picture coming out of this, that the COVID crisis has caused an economic crisis that we're not even getting the full dimensions of yet. It'll probably take several quarters to get all of that. But I started reaching out this week to some people that deal with the kind of people who are going to be most impacted by an economic crisis. And what I would call economically marginalized people. And even in my replies to all the people that are emailing me about masks or no masks or whatever, I say, we have to pull together as a community, because a okay, just one statistic. One of the worst projections I've heard is that gross domestic product for this year will be down 8%. That's an extreme. Maybe it'll only be 4%. But the global financial crisis dropped GDP by 2.5%. That translated into 8.8 million jobs lost. And a decade later, a lot of those households that had been the most impacted were still not back to what we call financial stability in the United Way life report. So I'm reaching out to people and trying to figure out what the most marginalized and impacted people can do for themselves, become their own advocates and become their own, I guess I'd call it self-empowered people to start to let their needs be known to the state legislature and to the federal government. Because, you know, and a person in a non-governmental agency can speak for people, but that's not the same thing as people speaking for themselves. So that's just so you know, I'm trying to use my little tiny platform as a county board supervisor to do some of that. Hopefully, we can recover and rebuild and move forward in the community.
Anybody else have any questions for Chris or Ray? Anybody at home? Nope. All right. Thank you, Ray.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chris. Members of the public who wish to address the county board on specific agenda items must register their requests at this time, with such comments subject to reasonable control of county board chair as set forth in Robert's Rules of Order. Any from the public? None. Resolutions and ordinances. Number 1, Town of Dewey Comprehensive Plan Amendment and Portage County Zoning Ordinance Map Amendment, Derms property.
Resolution number 9, 2020-2022, submitted by the Planning and Zoning Committee. This resolution amends the Town of Dewey Comprehensive Plan and the Portage County Zoning Ordinance Map.
Motion by Supervisor Rakowski, seconded by Supervisor Gussel. Discussion. If there's no discussion, all in favor with aye? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Number 2, Town of Plover Comprehensive Plan Amendment and Portage County Zoning Ordinance Map Amendment, Quick Trip Inc. property.
Resolution number 10, 2020-2022, submitted by the Planning and Zoning Committee. This resolution amends the Town of Plover Comprehensive Plan and the Portage County Zoning Ordinance Map.
Motion by Supervisor Barry Jakowski, seconded by Supervisor Moore. Discussion. No discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 3, Portage County Zoning Ordinance Map Amendment, Conopackey and Penn's property.
Resolution number 11, 2020-2022, submitted by the Planning and Zoning Committee. This resolution amends the Portage County Zoning Ordinance Map.
Motion by Supervisor Moore, seconded by Supervisor Rakowski. Discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 4, authorizing an agreement with Gremmer and Associated Inc. for County Highway Z and County Highway K roadway design services.
Resolution number 12, 2020-2022, submitted by the Highway Committee. This resolution authorizes an agreement between Portage County and Gremmer and Associates.
Motion by Supervisor Laddick, seconded by Supervisor Matt Jakowski. Discussion. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 5, resolution authorizing a new 20-hour-a-week women, infants, and children WIC aid position in accordance with Human Resource Policy 3.11.5.1 for Health and Human Service Department.
Resolution number 13, 2020, submitted by the Health and Human Services Board and the Human Resources Committee. This resolution authorizes the creation of a new aide position for the Health and Human Services Department.
Motion by Supervisor Dubek, seconded by Supervisor Gifford. Discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 6, approving and authorizing voluntary dental insurance plan provided for the Portage County Fringe Benefits Program for 2021 and 2022.
Resolution number 14, 2020, submitted by the Human Resources Committee. This resolution approves a 2-year agreement with Delta Dental as the provider for the voluntary dental insurance plan.
Motion by Supervisor Matt Jakowski,
So moved.
seconded by Supervisor
Second.
Zastro. Gary's on the board. Good, thank you. Discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 7, approving and authorizing the Life-AD&D insurance and long-term disability insurance plan provider for the Portage County Fringe Benefit Program for 2021 with an option for 2022.
Resolution number 15, 2020, submitted by the Human Resources Committee. This resolution approves a 1-year agreement with ReliaStar as the provider for life and long-term disability insurance with an option for a 2nd year.
I'll take a motion. Anybody?
Motion, Morrissey.
Motion by Supervisor Morrissey, seconded by Supervisor Johnson. Thank you. Discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 8, resolution to enter agreement as to delinquent special assessments and changes on county property acquired by tax deed.
Resolution number 16, 2020, submitted by the Finance Committee. This resolution authorizes the agreement between Portage County and local municipalities for settlement of special assessments and charges related to tax deeded properties.
Motion by Supervisor Dodge, seconded by Supervisor Laddick. Discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 9, budget adjustment for Land and Water Conservation Division Soil and Water Resources Management Cost Sharing Grant 2019 Extended Funds.
Resolution number 17, 2020, submitted by the Land and Water Conservation Committee, Planning and Zoning, and Finance Committees. This resolution authorizes a budget adjustment to add cost-sharing funds to the 2020 budget and requires a 2/3 supermajority vote.
Motion by Supervisor Moore, seconded by Supervisor Barry Jakowski. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 10, resolution to adopt the updated countywide Portage County All Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Resolution number 18, 2020, submitted by the Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee. This resolution adopts the Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Motion by Supervisor Don Jankowski, seconded by Supervisor Ande. Discussion. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 11, revocation of powers granted to the county executive in resolution 226-2018-2020 from March 17, 2020. I don't have anything. Motion by Supervisor Barry Jakowski. Second by
Morrissey.
Supervisor Morrissey. Discussion. Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the board. I was one of the primary ones who brought this to light that maybe we should be looking at it. I did do that a month ago when we were all hoping that maybe we would be less of a COVID state than we are at this point. I would ask that now we postpone this at least until December and take another look again. I don't know how the rest of the body feels. I'm speaking up now because I was one of the ones who thought that maybe we should look at it. I do believe that both our county board chair, Haya, and Executive Holman have been doing a fine job. I have not seen a bit of abuse of these powers, and I thank them for the efforts they've put in during these trying times. And again, I would ask that we postpone this till at least December.
Supervisor Syke.
I just want to say I agree with Supervisor Barry Chakowski.
Anybody else? Anybody at home?
Is that a motion?
It was.
I've got Supervisor Neville and then Supervisor Reeser after that.
But is that a motion being made by Supervisor Jakowski?
It is, Supervisor. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. If we're waiting for a second, I'll make it a second.
No, we're waiting for Supervisor Neville and then Supervisor Reeser first. I don't know if
I apologize. I'll wait.
From Barry. Just hang on a second, folks.
So you're making a motion to.
I had moved to begin with, and then you asked for discussion, I thought.
Right.
Right.
Yes, that's what I have.
Yes, so we're in the discussion part. Okay. Supervisor Neville and Supervisor Reeser.
Yes. We didn't know when we started into the COVID situation how it would go. And I've been very happy with the way things have been handled. And I think we need to keep, I agree with Supervisor Jankowski, Jaworski, sorry.
Now you know how I feel, Mildred.
You've been caught a lot worse.
Yeah.
So I think we should keep it in place because if we need something quickly, that's the way we can get something quickly. And I think we should leave it in force. And did you say December?
At a minimum.
At a minimum. Well, we probably have to be more specific in the motion.
He could clarify that when he gets to the end of December, so 31st.
So what I would say is we could just leave it like it is because we could stop it at any time. We don't have to change the time frame. So my recommendation and thought is let's leave it like it is and let's keep it in place. Thank you.
Are you folks at home able to hear Mildred with the new mics? Yes, very good.
Yes.
Just trying to do a straw poll. It's hard for me to hear her up here, so I'm hoping that you could hear her. So, and Ray Reeser, you had a comment?
No, I meant only to second the motion, but it sounds like maybe we need to clarify the motion now.
So, let's continue with discussion, please. First, Supervisor Ande.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to table this motion until December of this year.
I've got Supervisor Barry Jakowski was in the process of that. I'm Supervisor Ande. So if you'll allow me to go back to Supervisor Jakowski after the discussion, if there's no other further discussion. Supervisor Barry Jakowski, would you clarify your earlier motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would amend my motion to state that we should leave the emergency powers with both yourself and Executive Holman till after the first of the year after the first of 2021. Using that time frame, it would allow us to talk about it again at the January meeting 2021. If that appeases the rest of the body.
If there's no other objections to the motion, I will take a second. Supervisor Ande? There. We have a motion and a second to table this till the 1st of January. Is that correct?
Supervisors Astor here. We cannot table anything because then it goes away.
No, we're not. It's not to table it. That was rescinded by Supervisor Ande. What was
Postpone, please.
Yes, he's asking, and maybe postpone's not the best word. He's asking to leave it in place is maybe a better word.
Postpone is fine.
Certainly, but I was talking to the revocation of powers. But however, people that are much more intelligent than I am of writing these things,
yes,
whatever needs to be will be fine with me.
Just don't use the word table. It's a dangerous word.
Right.
It is.
Yep.
All of it. Yep. So what I'm being told by our corp counsel is that we should just rescind all of our motions and just take no action. And Chris and I understand. Dave, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. I will rescind my motion and save us time.
The resolution as adopted said it remains in effect for 2 years unless it's rescinded. So if we do nothing now, it continues in force. If we want to revisit it at any time, we can.
So taking no action does that.
Thank you. I will rescind my motion.
Okay.
Here.
Mildred, you had your hand up?
Nope, that's
Nope.
what I wanted.
Okay, so we're good? We're just gonna, if there's no other discussion, we're just gonna move on. Okay, thank you. Number 12, Diversity Affairs and Inclusive Committee Structure. Do you have anything for this? No. I will take a motion by Supervisor Gifford, seconded by Supervisor Barry Jakowski. Discussion. Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you. First, thank you, Mr. Jans, for forwarding my message to the chair, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to just share with the board, and thank you, Chair Haga. We had a very good discussion on this recently in your office. I appreciate your openness and your understanding of my approach. I would like to make a motion to amend the 3.1.XX, because we don't know what that will be, to strike items 1 through 3 of that. So that would be items A, 1, 2, and 3. And instead replace that with 3 members of the Portage County Board of Supervisors chosen at large and appointed by the county board chair. And I shared with the county board chair when I met with him the rationale for that. I guess I would ask every member to think about, in your mind, just think about when I say marginalized communities, what that means to you. You don't have to answer. This is a rhetorical question. And then I would ask you, how many of you think about doctors and lawyers, accountants, professors, electricians, mill workers, teachers, parents? Marginalized communities are all of those things. Pastors, they are social workers, they are workers in our very own organization. So when we say that the marginalized communities of this Diversity Affairs and Inclusivity Committee, by pegging them to human resources, health and human services, and public safety, we've somehow already made a biased decision about what marginalized communities could possibly be interested in. When I think about farmers, for instance, of course, we've got our very large ag industry. We have a huge, huge group of farmers. And all you have to do is go to the farmers market, and our Hmong community are some of our biggest farmers. Why wouldn't they be interested in land and water conservation or ag and extension? And the example I gave to Chair Haga what about the treasurer's department? Why wouldn't they be interested in that? Perhaps understanding best how to best serve people who have English as a second language. We are making some very biased decisions, not intentionally, very unintentionally, by saying it can only come from these three committees. While there is some basis for these three committees, of course, being important, there are many of our committees for which marginalized communities would be very interested in knowing better and being a part of. So that's my rationale. And again, I had great discussion with the county board chair, and he was very supportive of my discussion. And I'm looking for a second to my motion.
I will second that, Maressi.
We've got a motion by Supervisor Johnson and a second by Supervisor Maressi, and let me clarify that to strike A1, 2, and 3 and replace it with three county board committee members at large chosen by the county board chair. Is that correct, Supervisor Johnson? Or paraphraser?
Yeah, that is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
No, go ahead.
Okay,
I have a question.
Supervisor Neville,
When she said it,
please speak into the mic too a little bit. There you
when
go.
she said it originally, I thought she said chosen by the county board and appointed by the chair. And what was just said was appointed by the chair.
Did you hear that, Supervisor Johnson? It was Supervisor Neville was asked.
Yep, I was sorry, I was on mute. The way I have it written is I want to strike items A1 through 3 and replace with 3 members of the Portage County Board of Supervisors chosen at large and appointed by the county board chair.
I have a question.
Supervisor Maressi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Supervisor Johnson, does that mean that the members are chosen at large by the chair, or are they chosen at large by the Portage County Board and then the chair appoints them as they are chosen?
My intention is the county board chair would be the just like with all committees. So if that can be clarified, that's the role of the county board chair is to appoint.
Yes, and I want to clarify even more because even in our handbook, it doesn't spell it out very well. And it's one of the things that I've talked with staff about going forward is the process has always been that the county board chair makes recommendations to executive ops to get approval at executive ops and then forward it on for final approval at the county board. Is the process we've had for almost every committee that we have. So, and that's kind of what you're talking about anyway, Supervisor Johnson, the same process.
The same process, yes, following our tradition of, again, citizen appointments belong to the county executive and the committee meetings belong to the county board chair. That's the tradition, so.
Yes. So did you understand that, Supervisor Neville? Are you clear now?
Yes, I understood that, but I think that raised another question.
Go ahead.
For other committees, if they're appointed by the chair, don't they have to be confirmed by the executive ops committee?
Yes.
Yes.
So they're not there.
It will still follow that same process.
Yes.
Selected by the chair. Okay.
Yes. Selected by the chair and recommended by the chair, sent to executive ops to be forwarded on to the county board.
Thank you.
Okay, for final approval of appointments.
That is correct.
Yes, thank you. As Supervisor Johnson had stated, we did have a very good discussion, and one of the points she brought up that I didn't think, and I even told her it was a good point, was the fact that she said by going through the 3 committees, it also wouldn't allow the possibility of a good candidate because they are not on that committee. And I even told her, I says, that's a good point, and that's something that I didn't think of. But at the same time, when I was looking at this and trying to make sure that it was as transparent as it could be to try and have all the tools in the box to make it something that's going to be successful and we have as much input going into it versus just having the county board chair do it and then it goes to executive ops and it could get switched around or changed up there. That's happened in the past, or it could happen here at the county board floor. But I thought that if it went through these three committees, and they were the three that I felt were probably the most impacted, and there were other committees such as the treasurer that was mentioned as an example, and it's like I can see that, but yes, there's other things that would touch on all of them, but I thought that the other ones were bigger stakeholders. That's why I chose those committees. And then I thought that the supervisors within those committees, by having them make a recommendation and bringing someone forward, it was transparent, or it had as many hands on it before it got to the executive ops or the board to try and vet and bring the majority of the people out. I thought at the time, well, there's potentially 15 supervisors, if they're all different on all three of the committees, that would have an option to bring someone forward from each of those committees. So those were my thoughts when I was sitting there and I had to put something down. I guess that I'm indifferent, but I just would like to hear what others think. It's one of those items that's we're creating something new. We want to try and do it right. We want to make sure that anything we do is successful going forward. And that was kind of my logic when I went into that. Now I would hope those committees would put their best person forward, and we could have a good committee. And you know, even with the big part of this as well, being we are a committee-based board, the way everything comes out of committees and is dealt with, this one has the majority of them is the people at large that are on there, which would hopefully bring a lot to the meeting and a lot to the committee. So I wanted to make sure that the information that was going on in that committee, and I've said this before, that I don't want it to just take place in that committee. I want it to go out. That's a big component of this, is the education. And by having those folks on those particular committees, each one of them can go back to their committee and report or have discussion or dialogue. And as we had talked before, most of the people that are on these committees, and I would believe that in 2 years from now, we'll probably have resumes and things going forward. People that are on committees are usually either very knowledgeable or passionate about it. So I would hope that they would be a real asset to the diversity committee. So those were some of my thoughts and my reasons behind doing it the way I did.
Yes, question.
I'm going to refer to a corp counsel first here, and then I'll take questions or comments.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
This is Corp Counsel Dave Ray. Do you have a copy of this page from the packet in front of you there?
I do. Let me switch screens here. Yes.
Okay. And this was pointed out to me by the county exec just a minute ago, but I think it makes sense. Taking into account your amendment, could we then also strike paragraph B?
Oh, yeah.
Because we're not going to have committees do anything anymore. And then there's probably the very last sentence of the entire document, Executive Holman pointed out, is probably a carryover from a prior version. There don't appear to be any ex officio members, so we can probably strike the last sentence.
Yeah. I have no idea where that came from. That's not my verbiage. I did not create this document, so.
Okay.
You're absolutely correct. Thank you, Attorney Ray, for catching that. Item B definitely would be the case.
So our suggestion would be that your amendment include all of those things that I just went through.
Well, if the second will agree, I concur with that and would add that to my amendment.
Supervisor Moresi?
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarifications. So Someone had their hand up. Where was I? Supervisor Moa.
Yeah, I agree to what Supervisor Johnson has pointed out. I think, these are, and thanks for your reasoning behind it too. I also, I talk about it a lot. There's a reason, one of the reasons why we do need such a committee. There are a lot of times we do things well-meaning, unintentionally, and we don't see the impact that may have. But also, I am one to always say, like, a committee such as this one, where citizens are a big part of it, is to really bring our citizens, those most marginalized and most vulnerable, to be closer to government. And the only way we can really do that is to make sure that we don't limit it to those 3 committees. So I would ask that everybody support this amendment.
Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would like to say that Supervisor Johnson makes some good points, but I would also like to address a situation where we talk about if there was going to, we always talk when it comes to county functions and county positions that we should always talk about the position and not the person. So I want to be very clear, Chair Haga, that I in no way, shape, or form mean to imply that you may be biased. But when we go to one individual picking committee members, if there was to ever be any bias in that position, if we leave it as it reads, we have 15 different supervisors picking with 15 different personalities and 15 different points of view, picking those committee members. So it is a double-edged sword. So I urge you to think long and hard about giving one single person control of that committee that by nature is supposed to be very diverse. But I do understand Supervisor Johnson's reasoning, but again, there are situations where it may be a double-edged sword.
And I would just say to that though that it happens that way on all the other committees, and then everybody gets a kick at the can when it goes to executive ops. Everybody gets a kick at the can when it comes to the county board. Just because that individual brings something forward, it's very likely, and that's what I was trying to get away from, because I have to think, and I would be amazed if those appointments were made and they left and stood, that there wouldn't be discussion on one of the 3 or any makeup or any portion thereof. So I hear both sides of this story. So will somebody at home have a question? Supervisor Moresi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you explaining your rationale for choosing the committees that you did, and I really do. I think you had your heart in the right place with this, and seeing how many people would be impacted, through those committees. However, I do think we do need to think very creatively when we're working with this committee, and we need people who have done the work, who are passionate about it, who understand the language and the terminology and the structures that we're dealing with. There are people in that room that have done this work extensively for many, many years, some of us for our whole life. And I think it's very important that members at large are chosen and that they're allowed to share the information that you have and to guide the process along in a very nurturing and caring environment. These are really very difficult topics that we're going to be discussing and talking about. And I think having the right people lead that conversation to make sure it's productive and respectful and kind. And again, like I said, very nurturing, because it's some heavy stuff. It's some heavy stuff we're going to deal with. So I really do hope that the board will decide to let you choose the members at large, and then you will choose the right people to be in there. I know you can, and I know you will, and you know how passionate we are, and we've worked hard to make this committee come to a head, and we're hoping that we can have a structure that works, that is approved by the entire board. Thank you.
Anybody else? Supervisor Dodge, then Supervisor Moore.
I guess I have one concern. Most or all other committees have staff that is working with them to determine agendas, subject matter, etc., and kind of to provide guidelines and resources. If we have 3 members at large from the county board with no staff other than the executive's office as some support, I can see this committee just being a get together and talk about the issues, but not having any structure really. Part of this is that we're supposed to come back to the county board with reports and updates, etc. I guess I just see that it would lack some structure that is present with other county committees.
Thank you. Supervisor Moore?
I just want to say, this is a new committee. This is something very new to a lot of counties. Not a lot of counties have diversity in affairs, including committees. And I think because it's new, I think whoever ends up on this committee can really look at the structure and give recommendations of any ways that the committee structure can change to make it more efficient after the meetings have started. But we gotta try and put those who have the ability to get this going and structure it now and get those conversations going. I think even after many years, things can still change, and probably should. We've seen Marathon County change who their diversity and affairs committee reports to just this year. And so I just want to say whatever we put doesn't have to be permanent.
Somebody at home?
It can be revisited too.
Somebody at home? No. Supervisor Laddick?
Thank you. Just wanted to confirm that even though we eliminate these members from these 3 different committees, you can still select people from those committees if you think they're a viable asset to the new diversity committee. And just have to be careful that we don't get 3 members from all one committee, so we don't have another walking quorum type thing. Correct?
That was one of the discussions. Did everybody at home hear Supervisor Laddick? That was one of the discussions that came when I was listing the pros and the cons of doing it one way or another, of having it come from the 3 separate committees, is the possibility that they could bring 3 people that are on some other committee forward, and then we would have to look at that being a walking quorum when they're together. So that was actually something that was in the negative of doing it this way. So Supervisor Johnson, you had a question or comment?
Sure, I think Supervisor Pataki's been waving his hand, as has Supervisor Zastro. So I'll wait until they've had a chance to speak, because I've already spoken. I just have one last comment.
Okay, Supervisor Honnold, I see you had your hand up as well.
I did. One of the suggestions that I'd like to put forth, Supervisor Hangar, is that prior to appointing people, that you perhaps survey board members who are interested in working on these committees. I think all of us come from very diverse backgrounds, and while I may not sit on one of these committees, this has been my line of work. So I think soliciting the interest from the board members could be helpful when you make the final selection. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Who else do we have at home there? Supervisor Zastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm certainly not campaigning for a position here, but my simple question was, and it may have just been answered, but by striking these 3 committees, does that take them out of running in the at-large mix to be considered after the fact?
No.
No, absolutely not. They're still all county board supervisors. It's still a pool of 24, not including myself. So
thank you very much.
Anybody else at home? Supervisor Moresi, then Supervisor Johnson.
Yep. Supervisor Pataki is, yes, thank you.
Mr. Pataki first, please.
Supervisor Pataki, I'm relying, I've just got a little screen here, folks, so I'm relying on others to help me, so thanks for the help. Supervisor Pataki, go ahead.
Yeah,
You're
mute.
on mute, Stan.
Can you take him off over here, Lee?
You might be muted.
Stan, it's up to you to take off your mute. We can't do it here.
Mm-mm. No.
Still not hearing you, Stan.
No.
No, he's struggling tonight. So we lost him at the very early onset, and he got back on. So I don't know if it's his where his problems lie. Stan, if you keep working on it, if you can get it to work, just interrupt and we'll call on you. But we're going to move on to Supervisor Moresi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to answer Supervisor Dodge's question about staff, having the county exec and the assistant, Melinda McCord, just offer to be our point of contact for staff gives me the full confidence that this committee can thrive and do very well because they have their very watchful eye on every aspect of this county. So they'll know exactly when we have to bring in the appropriate staff or when we need to make referrals to other committees. So I really feel like we have that part under control. The other thing is that, as a committee discussing things about people of color and culture, I think it's very important to have the appropriate representation on that committee. And choosing people of color that are currently on your board are really important. It's important for us to acknowledge that and to honor that because I feel like they do have a lot of life experience that they can bring to this committee. So that's all I have to say. I hope we all support members at large appointed by Chair Haga. Thank you very much.
I think we had Stan trying to call in there, but it was muffled and we weren't getting that as well.
Can you hear me, Al?
Yeah, we can hear you. I think you're just hollering out the window at your house.
I've been trying to get a hold of you for the whole meeting.
Go ahead.
Now, are you hearing me on the phone or are you hearing me through the internet?
We're here. Everybody's hearing you, Stan. Can't wait.
No, but can you hear me on the phone or the internet?
We're hearing you on the internet. Everybody's hearing you on the phone, I guess, is what you're talking, but we're all hearing whatever device you're using. So go ahead.
All right. I've been trying to talk here for the last hour. But anyway, I agree with Barry Jakowski by keeping those three committees and then going that way. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Stan. Supervisor Syke, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Hearing a lot about the makeup of this committee and how it's going to be structured. And I guess my question would be for County Exec Holman on what he's been seeing as far as citizen interaction and interest, because I don't see anything in here from the university, from our police departments, the three that we have, our sheriff's department, and the city of Stevens Point. I strongly believe that if this committee is going to move forward, that all of these departments, municipalities, and university should have some representation and some skin in the game. At the executive ops, we had our sheriff and our three police chiefs stand up and say that they were all for this. And I think they would be an integral part of this committee moving forward. So I guess I'd like to hear from Executive Holman on some of the citizen interaction. And I'd like to have the discussion of how we're going to incorporate these other municipal bodies in the university and our sheriff, our law enforcement in this. I believe it is a very integral part moving forward.
Executive Holman.
Yeah, so very good question. I've been careful about how I've talked about that because I didn't know what the structure is going to look like in the end. So I haven't really gone out and said, hey, here's what it's going to be. Send me your information. But we have put links on the website and on my page for people who are interested in any committee to apply. And certainly, however this shakes out, my intention will be to put it out to the public, and to see who all is interested. To date, I think there's 4 or 5 applications we've received so far, just based on a general concept. But to your other point, I think like for the university, like they have some programs and personnel that focus on these issues. And, I think that they could be folded into the committee in terms of participation on any of these things, sort of a, reaching out into the community like you're talking about to address any particular issue that may be in front of the committee, dealing with safe students or whatever it might be. Same with law enforcement, like maybe if law enforcement wants or is asked to attend to discuss X, Y, or Z, then they would. My guess would be that they would certainly show up. They would discuss it, but then there wouldn't necessarily be a standing requirement for them to be there if they were talking about something that they didn't participate in. And this is me just speculating, of course. Same deal with municipalities, or even to the issue of staff support. Like in a sense that, I think if there was an HR issue or like an organizational structure of the county, that with some minor coordination, the body, the majority of that product and the agenda and the packet would come from that department in terms of bringing that to that committee, and then they would discuss it. And you could have a kind of an exchange of information that way with any potential partner. To the point that it could change in the long run, that maybe there are opportunities that we're not seeing now where it makes sense to fold other pieces into it. But I think that, not knowing how it will play out in the end, I think that, keeping an open mind and, making sure, to your point again, that we're reaching out to all of these individuals and organizations and across the county so that they know they have a place at the committee that they can come in and participate in some form or fashion. That can happen without necessarily having to expand the membership or structure, only because I think, if you get beyond, say, where we're at now, or maybe it was like 9 people or something like that, and there were a couple ideas thrown around, and sooner you start getting to a point of like, okay, well, who else do we include in the structure of it? So I think it's a balancing act. I think that the language that we have in front of us now kind of meets the spirit of the people who initially brought it forth in terms of having a majority of citizen input, and then they may actually come from some of the agencies that you're
Sure.
referring to.
So I guess what I may be hearing is, if we do strike 1 through 3, we could look at just having 1 county supervisor, and then that would leave 2 openings on that committee where we could look for others.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, you could talk about any potential combination, but, that's not what's in front of us at this point. But I think that, again, it's a matter of, it makes sense, I think, to have a portion of that committee made up by the board, and then that you do have the 4 members from the citizenry. But I guess my point is just to be that, one shouldn't necessarily, this is true for any committee too, I should add. Like, so someone doesn't have to feel like be on the committee in order to participate. And I think this may be a good example of where you can say, look, people are showing up to this committee because they're concerned about whatever the issue may be. There's no reason anyone can't show up to any other committee with the exact same reason. And maybe this is an opportunity to kind of, fan the flames on that a bit to get more people showing up and talking or asking questions. But I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you, but
that's fine. I just want to make sure that this is going to be the best it can possibly be for the county. And there is so much division throughout the county with, it's the city's job, or it's the university, or it's Plover, or it's us, it's them. And if we're truly going to move forward with this, I believe, and it's just me, I believe that we need to structure it in the best possible way to make sure that everybody is included and everybody's being heard. And I guess I'll just leave it at that.
I'd like to just comment too that some of these committees, when they get really big, transportation is a big one. I don't know if there's 12. Bob, do you know if there's 12 people on that committee? That's a big one.
Yeah, something
Or
like
more. And it's so hard to schedule meetings and make sure everybody can make it on those times. That gets to be a challenge. I believe that with the makeup of this new committee, Chris and I are going to be hands-on with whoever the chair is. It's important whoever this chair is and the makeup of this first swing at this, so that we get this and these discussions moving forward and tweaking or talking about process going forward, or trying to look at stakeholders. And I think that a big part of it is that if there's an issue that we're going to talk about, I would hope that this committee would reach out to the stakeholders and invite them. And I would think most of them would probably want to participate, and they would want to be there to hear either or gather input or to have input into the makeup or what's going to come out of that committee or be presented forward. And I would think they would want to be in on the very early part of that. So I would think that they get an invite. They probably all would show up, or for the most part, unless there was some kind of conflict with the schedule. Supervisor Moore?
Thank you for saying that, Mr. Chair. That was exactly what I was envisioning when I first thought about inclusive diversity committee for the county.
Thank you. Supervisor Neville?
Question: with our other committees, aren't our other committees all have some connection with staff, so that there is a person who can put things on the calendar, type minutes, all that sort of stuff?
Agendas?
Yeah, seems to me.
Supervisor Johnson, go ahead if you'd like to respond to Supervisor Neville.
Well, in general, if I may, thank you, and I appreciate the discussion. First, I would mention again that the 2020 Census Complete Count Committee has had no staff and no budget. It is because of superheroes like Supervisor Hanel and the help of the executive office and Mindy helping us coordinate that. And I've already reported to you once of the great successes that we're realizing on the Complete Count Committee, and I'll be reporting to you again as we wrap that up. So having the executive's office doing that coordination has been essential, along with, of course, Director Petrovsky helping with that as well. So there are models, and we've just demonstrated how a non-staff committee can be highly successful by, again, working collaboratively. I understand the need to sort of say law enforcement needs to be a part of this, because that's very sensational right now and very much in our presence. They are, but we've also had conversations on ADRC about diversity issues for our elderly, our LGBTQ community that is aging out. So we need to go into this, wash away our biases, wash away all of the sensational things that we're seeing in the press, wash away the division that probably may or may not exist between Plover, Stevens Point, and the rest of the county. But when we're on county board, when we come together as a body, we represent our districts. But when we're on committees, we're not there representing our districts. We are there representing Portage County. So I think we've got it covered. And I think we've got a good basis. And this is new, as Supervisor Moa had said, this is new. It may evolve and change. We can do that. We're all grown-ups. We can figure this out. This is a great opportunity to address LGBTQ issues for our aging population. It's a great time to talk about zoning and how we can get more people involved from marginalized communities, for people who want to start businesses. This is a great moment for Portage County, and it's because of all of you working together to make this happen, and I could not be prouder. Thank you.
Supervisor Matt Jakowski, then Supervisor Neville.
Mr. Chair, I'd ask that for a vote on this. We've heard a lot of the same stuff over and over. It's great to hear all the conversation. But with that conversation, I'd ask that you please repeat the amendment so everybody fully understands it. It's been a while since we've heard it. So, and I know there was some back and forth about who was appointing who, where, what, why, when, how. So just so everybody understands the amendment.
Okay, I will. I've got Supervisor Neville. I'm going to allow her to speak. And then Supervisor Johnson, I'll be looking to you for clarification on your amendment, please. So you're on deck. Supervisor Neville.
What I'm still not sure that this committee has handled. The Census Committee is not a permanent committee that's part of the county structure. And we have minutes now that are produced in particular ways and get sent to, I don't know how it all works, but there are a number of little grounded things that help the committee function. And it seems to me that to ask a supervisor to take that on, or a committee member to take that, you know, it just seems there needs to be some piece in here of who can handle that stuff. Not that the
executive's office.
Not that a group couldn't come up with something and make it work, but this is a permanent kind of committee we're looking at. It seems like it needs that piece of tie to the operation. So,
and I think what you're looking for in Supervisor Neville, and I'm not trying to speak for you, but to try and help you with this, most other committees like HR have the HR staff. Most finance has a finance director. This doesn't fall under this. Executive Holman has stated, and I'm not speaking for you either, but that he would allow his office to be that body.
Okay, fine.
But it's, as you say that, I sit here and think about that. It's not stated anywhere, and that's probably an important component. I don't know if we, because it is unique in that aspect, if it's something that we need to include, because going forward, when we have a new executive, new committee, you know, unless you're going to be here forever, Chris. So we need to probably spell that out, that that's where this committee falls. I think that's what you're looking for, Mildred.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Supervisor Johnson, I'm waiting for your thoughts on this as well.
Well, I was just trying to quickly pull up the Code of Ordinances as it related to committees. I'm not sure that any of the other committee structures articulate specifically who will issue the agenda, who will issue the minutes, who will take the minutes, who will coordinate gathering materials for the meetings. I don't know if we want that level of specificity. I'm fine adding, if there's a motion to amend it further to indicate that the office of the executive will serve as staff. That's fine, but I don't think we do that for any other committee. And if we are going to start doing it for this, then we better darn toot and start doing it for every other committee.
And I'm trying to think, and only, I think, and again, I'm not speaking for Supervisor Neville, but I think the only reason she says that is because of its uniqueness in the fact that it doesn't really have a home, where the other ones, it's pretty obvious or pretty clear. I can't think of an example of someone help me else of a committee that would seem to fit within that, where it really doesn't have a home. And I think that's what Supervisor Neville is trying to get to.
Again,
and whether we as a body or whatever feels that we need to clarify that, I'm fine with the understanding, because we are the ones that are going to be moving forward in the next 2 years with this while we are all still here. But if we think it needs further clarification, it's something that we can bring back and add later on. I guess as just as a thought. So, are you satisfied with that, Supervisor Neville?
Sure.
Thank you. Supervisor, did you have somebody else at home?
I was gonna just clarify on that like local emergency planning committee does
specified staff supported chapter. It's not unprecedented.
So did you get that, Supervisor Johnson?
I didn't, all I heard was mumbles.
Okay. What? This is Lee.
Yes. So there are some committees in chapter 3, such as local emergency planning committee, that do specify where staff is supported.
So what he's saying is it's not totally special in regards to that. So I think we're if unless anybody has any strong objections with that component of it, I think we'll deal with what we have before us tonight. And I don't see anybody at home or here raising their hand. So Supervisor Johnson, if you would please restate your amendment for the body.
Sure. The way I had stated it was strike items A 1 through 3 and replace with 3 members of the Portage County Board of Supervisors, chosen at large, appointed by the county board chair. In addition, item B would also be stricken.
And then the ex officio member at the bottom.
Oh, yeah, I have no idea where that came from. Yeah, that
I don't either. So,
yeah.
Okay, everybody clear on the amendment? Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I would just like you to make sure that everybody is clear on that.
Yes.
That a no vote on this doesn't mean this committee goes away. We're only voting
on the amendment.
On the amended as to how the committee will be structured.
Yes. So a yes vote would mean you are in favor of striking those 3 committees. A no vote would mean leave it as it is. Okay. And with that, we will have the clerk take the roll.
Chris Dubek.
Aye.
Ray Razor.
Aye.
Barry Jakowski.
Nay.
Matt Jakowski.
Nay.
Melissa Johnson.
Aye.
Joan Harnell.
Aye.
Julie Morrow.
Aye.
Dennis Robbie. Lost him? Okay.
We'll come back to him. Oh, he's gone.
Okay. Bob Gifford.
Aye.
Dan Martinson.
Aye.
Jerry Zastro.
Aye.
Scott Soik.
No.
Don Jankowski.
Aye.
Dave Laddick.
Aye.
Mike Splinter.
Aye.
Chai Mua.
Aye.
Vinnie Moresi.
Vinnie Moresi.
Oh, I see him saying aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Stanley Pataki.
Uh-oh. We can't even see Stan. I don't.
Is he a thumbs down?
thumbs down.
I believe he's a no.
Okay.
Anton Ande.
Aye.
Mildred Neville.
Aye.
Jeannie Dodge.
Yes.
Charlie Gussel.
Aye.
Al Haga.
Aye.
Larry Rakowski.
Aye.
Okay. Sorry, I just have to do my math here. Excuse. All right, so we have 19 in favor, 4 against, and 2 excused.
Motion failed. Amendment is approved. Back to the original motion as amended. Supervisor Barry Jakowski.
So moved. Let's
Oh.
approve it. I gotta go to the
Well,
bathroom.
we had a motion.
Had a motion.
We had
Or to approve the-
we had that originally. I don't know who made the motion and seconded from the beginning. Like I said, it's been a while, but
It was Gifford and Barry Jakowski.
okay.
Approve.
Yeah, the original motion was Gifford and Barry Jakowski. So if there's no further discussion, back to the original motion as amended. And with that, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay.
I could do it a lot easier if nobody has any objections. I could take a all in favor of, and then if there's any no's, I can take that separate. So to try and speed things along, if there's no one objecting, all those in favor of the amended motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone? Let the record show there was no one opposed. Very good. I think we're breaking ground, folks, so.
Thank you, everybody.
With that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Supervisor Dubek, seconded by Supervisor Barry Jakowski. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.